Hello, good day and welcome. Today we'll be dealing with University of Abuja Physics Post UTME past question 23. Which of the statements below are correct about the threshold wavelength of a metal? Which of the statements below are correct about the threshold wavelength of a metal? Number 1, increases with frequency of light. 2, increases with frequency, decreases with frequency of light. And 3, increases with light intensity. 1, A says 1 only, B 2 only, C 3 only, D 1, 2 and 3 only, and E none of the above. Now, which of the following are correct about the threshold? Now, threshold wavelength. Now, threshold wavelength simply refers to the wavelength that gives rise to the threshold frequency. Now, the threshold frequency is simply the minimum frequency a wave can experience. Now, the minimum frequency refers to the threshold frequency. Now, for the minimum frequency to be reached, the wavelength has to be maximum wavelength, because threshold wavelength is the minimum frequency or maximum wavelength of incident radiation necessary to release photons from a given surface of a photoelectric effect. Now, in photoelectric effect, when the wavelength is at its maximum wavelength will give you the minimum frequency, which is the threshold frequency. Now, from the equation of a wave, we have that V equals F lambda. Now, meaning that what? Lambda becomes V over F. Meaning, if you want to do it in terms of proportionality, you have that lambda equals, if you remove the y, if you multiply both sides by 1 over y, sorry, you have that this lambda becomes what? 1 over F. Now, 1 over F, meaning that what? The wavelength is inversely proportional to the frequency, meaning that when the frequency increases, the wavelength will reduce. Now, if the frequency is reducing, the wavelength will increase. Now, the question is asking us that which of the following statements are correct about threshold wavelength of a metal. And I told you that during photoelectric effect, the threshold wavelength is the minimum frequency that gives rise to the, or is the maximum wavelength that gives rise to the minimum frequency of incident radiation, now necessary to release photons from a given surface. Now, photons are being emitted from the surface of the metal due to this wavelength. Now, number 1 says increases with the frequency of light. Now, like I told you, the wavelength is inversely proportional, so it cannot increase with the frequency of light, but then it decreases with the frequency of light. Now, an increase in the frequency of light will actually decrease the wavelength, like I told you, and I use this formula. I said lambda varies inversely with 1 over F. That's the wavelength varies inversely with the frequency. So now, decreases with the frequency of light is correct. 3 says increases with light intensity. Light intensity doesn't affect the wavelength in a photoelectric effect, doesn't affect the threshold wavelength. So the correct option is 2, which is option B, 2 only. Now, 2 is the only correct option in this particular question, because A says 1 only, and I said 1 is not correct. D says 1, 2 and 3, that's actually wrong, and E says none of the above. So the correct answer to this question is option B. Thank you and God bless you. Please ensure you subscribe to our channel for more videos.